Hello, everyone. Madeline Dale here, and I am back with another episode for you guys on Book Chat. And today I've got a fantastic guest for you to meet. I'm going to bring him in and let him introduce himself. So take it away, my friend.
Yeah. Hi, Maddie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Yeah. So my name's David Edward. I started writing books. I published my first book just in February of 2021. So
Nice.
not that long ago, but since then I've written 45 books.
Holy cow. You
Yeah,
have been busy.
I have been busy. So I guess my background, I guess my story, the quick story. So got out of high school, went to college. Well, college wasn't really for me, so I joined the army. I was a special agent in the army. I invaded Panama and arrested Noriega. I spent 6 months at the Soto Cano Air Base in Honduras. We were intercepting DC-9s that full of cocaine. They were flying it from Colombia. Then my state-bound assignment was with the 513th MI out of Fort Monmouth, who 2 weeks before I got there had been sent over to Desert Storm. So I had a fun military enlistment. When I could have re-enlisted, I realized that college wasn't that bad. So I didn't re-enlist, and I got out and I went out and I finished school. I have a bachelor's degree, 3 master's degree, and a doctorate in engineering.
Nice.
And I've done all kinds of things. I own a couple of companies, successful companies. I've been the president of a university, and I decided I wanted to start writing. And like a lot of people, I didn't know how to do it. So I would watch shows like yours where I could listen to other authors talking and that kind of stuff. And my first book was called Alamosa, and it took me a little over 2 years to write it. And it really probably isn't that good. People tell me the story's good, and once they get into it and they kind of figure out what I'm doing, they can tolerate it. But it wasn't great. So, but I'm not. My personality, you can probably tell, isn't that I quit and try something else. So I'm like, screw this. So I have been writing between 1,500 and 6,000 words a day for a year and a half. I've written over 1 million words, published 45 books, split down the middle. Half of them are history or history related. The other half are historical fiction. They're fiction, they're thrillers basically, but I tend to write back in time periods that I lived through versus today. I don't find today very interesting for thrillers, to be honest. It's just, I mean, the entire story is what two people call themselves on the cell phone. Someone looks at a map and there's no story. So I like the stuff in history, which is a little harder to get the information around. Yeah. So, and I've had this book, which one? This one, Panama Red, is a little bit of a success. It sold about 60,000 copies, kicked off the series, and the series has sold about 100,000 copies. So that's kind of my biggest hit.
Sweet. Okay, first off, I am super blown away by everything you have accomplished, and that is awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's not accomplishments; it's just doing stuff. I mean, what am I going to do? Watch TV?
True.
So yeah,
I'm not a major TV watcher myself. So, and it's consisted of mostly cartoons since I have had my son when it is on. But okay, I have to ask, because you said you started publishing earlier in 21. Yep. Did you have some of this stuff written beforehand before you started publishing? You just kind of
no. I spent over 2 years on the first book, and we can talk about the way I write now versus. When I started writing that, like everyone else, I watched all the YouTube videos, and I just wanted, how do you write a book, right? And the general theme of the advice was generally, don't worry about it. Your first draft is going to suck. Just dedicate yourself, get it down on paper, get it finished, and then you can spend your time and go back and go through it. So I did that. And it was a nightmare because I was a better writer by the end of the book than I was at the beginning of the book. So my style had changed a lot. I wasn't keeping track of the details of some of the story plots that are important. And then when I went back and tried to reread it, it was just terrible. So, I mean, I probably wrote the first draft in about 6 months or so. And I also didn't write it in order. So I would, and then when I was fixing it, I'd go back and I'd work on something in the front, but I'm a better writer now. But now the stuff leading into it and the stuff coming out of it's not that good. So I got to work on that. And it's just, it just took forever, and it was a slog. And I decided that the internet gives you that advice because they don't want people writing books, right? Because they're trying to be anti-competitive, and whoever's giving the advice, they know it's bad advice, but it's the advice we get.
That is, it's hard to write a book. And as I like to keep in mind, there's always room for improvement with everything you do, everything you write. You're constantly improving, finding better ways to put stuff down, better ways to order it, or even just use normal conversation between your characters. So.
Yeah, look, it's hard to start a book. It's really hard to write a book. it's near impossible to finish a book.
Oh yeah.
So I tell people, just like you advice, I always tell them, if you want to, if you think you want to be a writer and you want to write a book, pick a story that you want to know the ending of,
Mhm.
because that way you're as motivated as everyone else to get to the end of that thing and see what the heck happens.
That's a good way to go about it. I haven't
Yeah.
ever thought of it like that because my brain always just like plays it out in my head. It's weird. So I'm one of those organized chaos kind of writers. I have notebooks and sticky notes just like spread out, and it works. But I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
so what is your like process like when you get a story idea? Do you like plot or pants?
Yeah, I refuse to use either of those terms. Just so you know, I'm an old guy, but I'm new to this industry. And the industry is joining me. I'm not joining it. So I'm not a pantser. I'm
Yes.
not an outliner. Any of that stuff. Although the process is going to sound a lot more like pantsing.
Hmm.
But that's not really what it is. So my process is very unique. So what I'll do is tell myself a story, a simple story, like what's interesting. Basically, what would be an interesting time period? What would be an interesting character or an interesting problem? And then what's an interesting arc for a character? And I do that day after day after day until I remember a single story, because the good ideas stick around, and
Hmm.
until I feel like, okay, yeah, that's the story. So that's I guess we'll call that. Well, that's not even my outline yet. That's the framework, and then I will go find a picture that I start off thinking that picture will be the cover. It has never made it to be the book cover, but I start something to look at, um, and then I just start to kind of frame it out, and and then I'll write the book blurb. So I'll write the back of the book, what you
Hmm.
would read to if you wanted to see if you
Yeah.
want to buy it, and then I just say to myself, okay, I know what this book is about. I can see the book cover. I can read the book blurb. Write that book, and then that's what I do.
I like that idea because I've
Yeah.
found myself doing that a lot too. And then I'm like, okay, wait, I changed the story. I'm going to change the blur, but I really like what I came up with.
Oh yeah, you
So,
gotta you gotta be willing. You can't you gotta be willing to go back and you keep revising the book blurb.
mhm.
But so I mean, so basically that's my outline, but it's not an outline like we talk about outline, bullet points and a list and
Yeah,
timelines and all that, so
no, yeah.
scenes, or it's all that stuff. Yeah.
I always like to consider that a little bit of planning goes into the pantsing kind of aspect because you do have to kind of do some research sometimes depending on what you write. And
Well,
yeah.
I do tons of research. I mean, the
Mhm.
beautiful thing with the internet, we don't know, we've forgotten how great we have it from a research standpoint, because I can
Mhm.
pretty much, especially since I'm doing historical time periods, like I've written stuff in the 1860s and the 1920s and the 1980s.
Mhm.
So I can just use the internet, and when I have to research something, it doesn't take any time at all. I can just research. I actually have a couple monitors, and then I have one monitor is basically my research monitor. The other one's my writing monitor.
Sweet.
So
That
yeah.
actually makes it a lot easier, especially like with the organizing stuff like that, because I do the same thing. And really, I have to admit, this is my husband's computer. I just kind of took it over when I entered the writing world because he's
Right.
a gamer. So he's got the two monitors and stuff. And I'm just like, okay, so I'll have stuff pulled up on one and then all this stuff here. And I'm like, okay, we're good. I got all my stuff and just keep going. And I've
Yeah.
actually found it's really hard to go back to writing on just like my laptop after working with two screens.
I can barely do it. I can take the laptop if I'm watching sports or something, and I can work through something that was very much in my head or a scene or something, but I can't take the story very forward because I am constantly, looking stuff up and trying to figure stuff out. Because when you're writing historical fiction,
Mhm.
it's got to ring true to some of the things that happen. Now, it doesn't necessarily, like, if one of my characters is going to see the play Annie in
Mhm.
1987, I don't necessarily need to know whether Annie was still on Broadway or whether it was off Broadway. I mean, but I will still look it up and not always follow the exact truth, but get close enough so that it fits in with the time period.
Yeah, and it's weird how some readers get very, very picky about certain things like that. It's like this is a work of fiction, guys. Remember that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, but that way, so if you take the details that don't really impact the story and you get them right, then it's just
mhm,
one less thing that people have to worry about when they are, deciding they don't like your book.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your readers, do you find that they've like enjoyed more of one piece of your work than the other?
Well, you're a little detached from the readers to some degree, so I don't necessarily know of the folks. So I basically I've got all the history books I talked about. I've got a book on Atlantis, which is
Mhm.
a real book, not a storybook. But that's a different group of people. And then I have 3 series. I have a science fiction series. I thought I was writing horror, but no one thought it was scary enough. So now I now call it paranormal series. And then
Mhm.
I have my thriller series, the action military thriller stuff. And I don't know that those audiences are necessarily crossing over.
Yeah.
Although I consistently get a lot of reviews that are less than perfect. So, maybe the people that don't like it are the ones crossing over.
Could be. And I mean, those are not bad reviews because I feel like more often than not, they're honest reviews. So when I get those 5 stars reviews, I question whether they actually read it. Because I'm like, I know my work's not perfect, but I mean, as long as you enjoyed it, I'll take it.
It's interesting. I don't fully. I mean, look, it's hard to write a book. So even a bad book, and especially when it's from I'm a very small time author, and it's a small rinky dink publisher. So a lot of people really bled to get that book out, and I don't fully understand the mindset of someone who wants to come along and feel smart and give it 1 stars and write a paragraph about how everyone should be killed. I have those reviews. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
and they used to devastate me. I mean, I read all of them. There's probably a grain of truth in there somewhere. In
Hmm.
fact, all the reviews, the good reviews and the bad reviews, there's something you can take away from it. Either something people like or they don't. But I don't really understand the energy that gets put into some of the negativity. But it's not just with book reviews; it's the entire internet. If you've ever heard of the internet before, it's a very friendly, loving place.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
no, oh no, it's the opposite of that. Yeah, it's
Yes.
the primary emotion on the internet is rage, right? And that carries over everywhere.
And it's sad that it is because those trolls, they like to hit post hard with reviews and stuff. It's just like, really? Is this necessary? Like,
Well,
whatever.
we won't talk politics, and I don't know what any of it matters, but I smile. I can't stop smiling that Amazon is discovering that their own review system doesn't really work. And
Yes.
I have suffered people that have very high Amazon rankings that just come down and do just the straight 1 star. And I've tried to discuss it with them, and
Mhm.
and I'm like, there's no, it doesn't say verified purchase. I know they didn't read it. But they're very, with me, they're very callous and all this stuff with themselves. So maybe that'll fix some of this. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I enjoy that they're having to eat their own dog food a little bit. I have to be honest about that, even though they're the biggest book platform there is. So
Oh.
I'm not making them mad. I'm their friend. I love them, but
Yeah, it's a love-hate relationship with them, I'd say, for any author, because they have the benefits and then there's the not so awesome benefits. Because I've had author buddies that they've like taken down their stuff. So I'm like, you have to tiptoe like on eggshells because they didn't. It was something about like somebody had pirated their work on a different website, so they flagged their original book as like, hey, you don't have the rights to this, and it just
yeah.
whole debacle. It's
No,
crazy.
they'll make some arbitrary decisions that I don't understand, and then they won't communicate or allow you to ask questions about it. And just like what they're going through now, it affects their bottom line. But for us
Mhm.
authors, every one of those books that's on Amazon affects our bottom line too.
Yeah.
We're just not them. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
but
insane.
whatever. It's all good.
Yeah.
Hey, Amazon's 85% of the market. I've tried selling on all the other markets, including Barnes and Noble. And unless especially for ebooks, you can't sell every ebook yourself. So you're going to have to deal with Amazon until something changes.
That is true. It's like the necessary evil kind of
It
thing.
is. It is. And it's not awful. If you stay in the middle of the road, it's not awful.
Mhm.
And if you put up with some inconveniences, it's not awful. But it's a big market.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I have to admit that because I've tried going wide, but I still get more sales on the Amazon front than I do others. And it's
Yeah,
just like, yeah, we're gonna keep doing what we're doing. And
it's what it is right now. I don't know what it'll be in 10 years.
yeah.
But the nice thing is that if you self-publish on Amazon, or if your publisher puts it on Amazon, you've signed a good contract. If the markets change, you can they don't own it, so
Mhm.
you can move with the markets.
That is good. So okay, and I have to ask, your latest book published was what again?
Well, I published so many freaking books. I have 2 short stories that came out
Yeah.
like a week ago. My, my
Ooh,
my big tentpole book called The Bigs just came out about 3 weeks ago, and
okay.
it's the third in the paranormal series.
Ooh,
The second book was called The Smalls. Third book is The
yeah.
Bigs. You can see the relationship there. I had the book on Atlantis came out in April, and I'm getting a lot of play on that book. Matter of fact, I was just on Coast to Coast AM. If you've ever heard of it, it's a big time.
I have. It actually, I want to say I had a friend on it recently, but I can't remember when
Yeah,
it was. It may have been a couple months ago because everything kind of blends together right
sure.
now.
Yeah, no, it's a big time radio show. You got to stay up till 3 in the morning because that it's an overnight show.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm having lots of success. But I think and then this book Down Ballot, which was the last one in my thriller series, and the first part of the thriller series, came out about 4 months ago too. So I'm busy.
A
I
good
keep
busy though, it sounds like. So tell
yeah.
me more about your paranormal series. Like, what creatures and stuff do you have going on in there?
Well, so what I tried to do there, and it's called Paranormal Oaths, is the
Mhm.
series name. The first book is Alamosa, which was my first book, and I tried to make that a kind of a paranormal Western philosophical thriller,
Yeah.
which it is, and so what I do is I take a central premise of what's the difference between justice and the law, and I put it
Mhm.
in Old West setting because that's where that type of thing happens. And then I
Yeah.
throw in ghosts and the afterlife, and really run the main characters around a bit, trying to answer that question. And of course, one of the characters is a judge, so he's on the side of the law. And of course, his kind of sidekick buddy is a kind of an everyman. He's on the side of justice. And then
Yeah.
they have this ghost and named Maggie, and she was hung. And the
Ooh.
idea is, was she guilty or innocent? Does it matter? And what does it mean?
Mm.
So, kind of the hook line is, we might have a second civil war because this is 1860s, 1880s Colorado. It all hinges on the guilt or innocence of one woman, but she's already dead. So
Ooh.
yeah, so it's kind of cool, and cool things happen. And then I include a lot of real history, and everywhere in my book so far are places I've been. So this place takes place largely in Colorado. I lived in Colorado for a long time, for like a
Mhm.
decade. So all the locations are real locations.
That's awesome. Do you feel like do you feel like as an author, writing what you know works better than writing places into your work that you haven't been?
When I was starting, it's the more tools you can bring to your toolkit when you're learning how to write books, the better. So if you stick to things you've experienced, not putting yourself in the book and just recanting things you experienced, but I drove around. I drove around a ton in the Rocky Mountains. So I have
Yeah.
these memories of all the vistas and the plains, and it's very interesting. Everyone thinks the Rocky Mountains are all up and down, but there's not. There's huge sweeping plains. There's buttes. I learned what a butte was, and all that stuff. So I can bring those visualizations into my writing, which helped me early on. Now, like I said, I'm writing book 46 and book 47 right now. So I kind of know what I'm doing. I know how to. I'm still very visual. So if I'm writing
Mhm.
someplace I haven't been, I go find pictures of it
Yeah.
on the internet, and I just look at those pictures. And I've been to a lot of places, so then I can kind of get a feel for. In fact, I just finished a scene where the characters go to Bimini
Mhm.
Island off the coast of Florida. Well, I've
Ooh,
never been there, but I've been off the coast of Florida. I've been on boats. So I just find pictures of it, and then that gives me the description. So I'm still describing kind of the real world.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to ask, how does that work with your Atlantis stories? Because I know Atlantis has always been something that fascinates me. So I'm going to pick your brain on it. Tell me
Well,
about that.
you're in for a treat. The Atlantis story is not it's not fiction. It's
Yeah.
I absolutely have found where Atlantis is. Now, lots
Sweet.
of people have said that, but I published this book. So I watch a lot of YouTube, and there's this channel called Bright Insight. This guy Jimmy Corsetti. In
Mhm.
2018, his channel took off because he did a couple of videos, and he found this place in West Africa that looks like what Plato told us about Atlantis.
Ooh.
Um, but he didn't quite seal the deal. He was on Joe Rogan, and there's another guy who has a different view, and they're kind of competing. But I watched all this stuff because I was out of Chapter Goddess material. Just so you know, I watched all your stuff 3 or 4 times before I dared
Oh,
switch to another channel. But
I appreciate
of course, of course.
it.
But then I was like, you know what? Because I'm a nerd. And growing up in the 70s and 80s, look, I read all the books. I read Chariots of the Gods, Eric Von Daniken. I watched all the TV shows. It's not like today where there's so much more content, but I watched it all, and I want to believe in all that stuff. But coming into
Mhm.
the 80s when I hit high school, I mean, it kind of faded away. So I switched over and I started reading all the classical Greek work. I've read all of Plato's works 5 or 6 times. I've read something called the Histories by Herodotus. I mean, I've just all that work for no reason. It was just I got to read something. I didn't find a lot of material I liked. I was still interested in things like Atlantis. So I wanted to know all about them. So I had that base, and then when I watch these videos, I'm like, he doesn't quite seal the deal, but I think he's onto something. So I'm going to see if I can do it. And I mentioned I was in the military. My
Yeah.
job there was I was what they call a counterintelligence agent, special agent, and so
Hmm.
I studied a battlefield counterintelligence and what they call human intelligence collection. So, which is fancy sounding stuff, but all it really is the ability to look at what people are doing and what people are saying and put it all together to see if, like for us, because I'm looking at our troops, are we giving anything away? The
Yeah.
Tuesday night before a live fire exercise, do the moms always go to the 7-Eleven to get extra milk because they know that the guys aren't going to be back for a couple of weeks? This was the 80s, so that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Are there trends we can pick up on? So I had that, and then I mentioned the education. I have a doctorate in engineering, so I
Mhm.
know a lot about um, how things are supposed to be laid out. I know a lot about the structure of things and all. So I brought those two things together, and sure enough, this guy Jimmy, this is it. He found it. He didn't actually find it, but he spread the word. So if you ever want to look up the Rishat structure or the Eye of the Sahara,
Yeah.
which is in Mauritania in West Africa, it is absolutely Atlantis. And then in the book, what I do is I say, okay, let's find all the real historical what we call primary sources for Atlantis, and Plato is the only primary source. And then let's see what he said. Let's start from the beginning. And then I made a couple rules. I can't assume Plato's an idiot. I can't dismiss anything he said, because everything that you've ever seen on Atlantis or I've ever seen always starts the same way. If it's an hour show, the first half hour is amazing. You see these incredible locations, good looking people, usually scuba diving and climbing rocks, and there are islands with beautiful blue water. And then the second half is kind of a setup where they say, okay, well, we have to ignore this, we have to ignore this, and if we look at this way, then maybe it's this place, or this place. And that's how all the shows always are.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to find it. I want to see it. If it's findable, I want to find it. So I
Yeah.
decompose Plato into all his requirements, because he gives us lots of measurements, and I know all about the history of it and stuff. And I overlaid it to this place, and then in the book I just detail how it matches everything. When you get done, and I score it, it matches this Rishat structure by 99.32%. So, and it's impossible. It's impossible for it to be a coincidence when you go through the 50 data points that you have, from the time period to the geography
Yeah.
to all that stuff. So, yeah, if anyone listening, or if you want to look up the Rishat structure, or the book is Atlantis Solved, if you want to go buy that on Amazon, you will know where Atlantis is too.
That was freaking amazing. Not gonna lie, that you just kind of blew my mind with that. Because like growing up, they make all the Disney cartoons and stuff with Atlantis, and it's like, that's not real. But like when you actually bring in the real stuff, it's fascinating. And I'm one of those people that likes to go and explore all that kind of stuff and see it. So that's gonna go on my bucket list.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
No, it's wildly interesting. And when you start to read through Plato, and he wrote what they call dialogues, and I can talk about what those are,
mhm,
but the one that talks about Atlantis, there's two that talk about Atlantis, but the one that has the most data is called Critias.
yeah.
And when you look at this Rishat structure and then go back and read Critias,
Mhm.
it's like it's like whoa, that he is talking about this place. It's not just an analogy, or whatever they claim it is. It's like, no, this is what he's describing.
Yeah. So when doing all this research and stuff, was there anything that surprised you in your findings that you may
For
have
Atla-
had like a misconception from
for
earlier
Atlantis,
things?
for Atlantis
Yes.
specifically. So there are a number of things that surprised me. The first thing that surprised me is there are passages in Plato that have been ignored by everyone looking for this thing, that we get access to. Some scholars and some more serious researchers find it, but I don't think they apply it necessarily, rigorously. But there's a lot more in Plato about Atlantis than we hear or than we see. There's kind of 3 or 4 main points, and we get that. So that surprised me. When I was getting close to getting the book out, I had done a lot of surveys and online stuff, and I was surprised at the passion that many people have around what they believe and where they believe it is. When I released the book, I had underestimated the passion for people that might find my answer different than their answer. So I went through a round
Mm.
of exciting contacts where people were telling me things They didn't necessarily line up with anything I had found historically or that were real, but they certainly believed them. So that, and then the last thing that has surprised me is even when I get on a big show like Coast to Coast AM or any of that stuff, and we talk through it, and I lay the evidence out, and everyone agrees. It's like, oh no, okay, that looks like you found it. That
Yeah.
lasts about 30 seconds. And then they're off because Atlantis has been beaten to death. Atlantis isn't findable in a lot of people's heads. It's just they can be convinced, but then when they step away from it, oh, maybe there's another interesting theory. And it seems like people like the pursuit and the logical constructs around the idea of it more than they really want to find it to some degree. So I say those three things have absolutely surprised me.
Wow. That would be kind of frustrating, honestly, just to have them deny it like that. So,
Yeah, it was frustrating initially. I'm disappointed, I guess would be the main way to look at it. Well, first off, there's so much noise. So they don't know me. Why am I an authority, and why should they land on what I'm saying when there's 100 other people that have bigger voices that seem like authorities too, that are saying something else, right?
yeah.
So yeah. But we'll
Oh,
see. I'm still working on it. I've got a documentary pitched with the Discovery
sweet.
Channel. And if we can get
Sweet.
that out there, and because I think people are very visual. So listening to me explaining it, or even reading it in a book and seeing all the diagrams and the measurements, that's one thing. Seeing it in a video, I think that will help more people come around to accepting this is the answer.
And it's weird that that's where our world is at, is they need the visual stuff rather than reading it in a book,
Well,
you know?
not only that, but this as a YouTuber, the attention
Yeah.
span, just since I've been doing this for 2 years, the attention span's
Yes.
going down.
It's
So
true. And
yeah,
TikTok is making it kind of worse. They're like, here, your 15-second video is all you need to get everybody's attention. I'm like, you can't do hardly anything in 15 seconds.
I can't.
So,
I'm old. I can't get my head around that. In 15 seconds, I'm just starting to pay attention, and then I'm on to the next one. I don't even know what it is.
yeah.
So, but I don't know whether it's good or bad. I don't care. It just is. And if I want to get the word out, I've got to learn how people communicate and believe stuff now. I got to get into those mediums and those channels.
Yeah. And I think you'll get it there because it's a fascinating thing, I think. And it's
Well,
maybe this
the
is what I
advantage
don't know.
the advantage I have with it that no one else has, no one else who's
Yeah.
ever pitched Atlantis has, is that everything I'm saying is decomposed into fact and things you
Hmm.
can measure from source documents. So my arguments actually frustrate people quite a bit because if they want to believe something else, they try and dismiss my research with broad sweeping strokes, and they can't because
Yeah.
everything is very detailed. And even if I'm wrong on something, and it's like I said, there's like 50 data points. Even if I'm 100% wrong on one of them, then that changes the percentage from 99.32 to like 97.
Yeah,
And,
it's not going to be huge
yeah,
because
it's
you've
not.
got your solid background versus they're just like, here's my whimsy idea that I have no proof of.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. So some of the reviews, we were talking about bad reviews. I've got some. It's funny. The worst review I got on that book is a 2-star review, and the person wrote something along the lines of, "This guy is a hack who couldn't write sales receipt. The book is terrible, but by God, did he did he find Atlantis?" So I'm like, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. They don't like the writing style. That's fine as long as
Yeah.
they accept. But they do accept the argument. It's a very tight argument. So yeah.
I feel like you could probably use that for marketing purposes, honestly, because there's been a few authors I've seen that have taken negative reviews and turned them into like social media marketing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be a good one for that. So,
Yep.
with your books, with having somebody out, I have to ask, how do you market? Like, what is your best that you found best way to market your books?
All right. Do you want me to give you the holy grail of how to market if you want to be a self-published or small published author? I can give it to you, but I mean this is gold. I have really done a lot of work to figure
Yeah,
this
you
model
have
out. But I can
done
tell
work.
you. Do you want me to tell you?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Here is how you sell books. First off, you can't just have one book. If you have one book, you can get lucky, like the guy that wrote The Martian or whatever. But it's like playing the lottery. Probably, I would say, put the book out and then go play the lottery. That's how you're gonna make your money. You got to have, and you're not gonna like this. You got to have 5 books. You have to have 5 books out. 3 of them have to be related in some genre. They don't have to be a series, but it's better if they're a series. And this is primarily on Amazon, which is like 85% of the
Yeah.
market. Once you have all of that, what you do is you take the 2 books that aren't part of your core, you make them free. You put them. You go to the Reddit free book
Ooh.
subs and all that stuff. Some of them have like
Yeah.
2 million what members, whatever they call them.
Yeah,
And
Reddit is awesome.
yeah,
So
and you put those for that. It's awesome because you
yeah.
instant reach. So you put the 2 free ones over there. What happens is on Amazon, Amazon will market your books to people if they have touched something of yours before, which is why with one book, it doesn't matter. If they love it or hate it, there's nothing else to sell them or to show them. So you give them the 2 free ones, which just gets reach. So now you're
Yeah.
building basically your list in the Amazon program. Then of the 3 core books, you step the price. The first one 99 cents, the second one more than 99 cents, and the third one whatever you think you want to sell your books for. I sell my ebooks. I just upped them to $5.99. They were $4.99. And then those 2 free ones feed in, and
Mhm.
you'll see it. You'll see it in all the charts. People will come over.
Yeah.
Some of them will spend that 99 cents. Now, if you want to hurry up, you make that first book in the series free also. That's what I did with Panama Red, wherever it is
Yeah.
here. So I sold 60,000 copies of this, but then the sales they were down. I mean, but you can see the chart. They go down. So I'm like, okay, now I'm ranked like 100,000 or something. So I'm selling 2 or 3 books a day, which is great.
Mhm.
But I'm not building that list. So I made that free. And so now I get 50 to 100 downloads of that a day. And then all my other ones are regular price. So then it feeds that. And the way the math works is about 35% of the people that read Panama Red, which is a good book,
Mhm.
will then read the next one. They'll buy the next one, or Kindle Unlimited. They'll which you still make money on. And then about half the people that read that next one will read the rest of them. So about 15%. So if I have 100 free downloads of Panama Red, I'm going to have 35 sales of Drive Faster, which is the second book. I'm going to have 15 to 20 sales of all the other books over time. It takes them a month or 2 or 3, and you just
Yeah.
keep building that pipeline. You do the Amazon countdown deals to the books you're selling. You don't make them free. Because I got 45 books. So I make the history books. I'll always have a free one every day because there's so many of
Yeah.
them. But if you only have 5, you can't, because you can't afford. You can't, the 2 things you're selling or 3 things you're selling, you can't give those away. So
Yeah.
you keep the front as a feeder. You give that away. They call it lost leaders, and then you work with it. And if you do that, I think, well, look, it worked for me, and I'm writing basically men's adventures, which is like a tiny market because guys don't read books.
They
And
do. They're just not
well,
as
not like non-guys do or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like 70-30 or something,
Yeah.
So but you do that in your genre. You stay tight to your genre. You keep your brand. And matter of fact, make sure your pen name and your author photo kind of fit your brand. All that stuff. But you just do that, and notice everything I've said. I haven't spent a dime. I haven't spent any money. I have wasted money trying all those ways to pay, but you're not going to pay your
Yeah.
way through the internet noise. You're
Nope.
not going to pay your way through Amazon. Amazon's got millions of folks like us all paying to compete against each other to show a picture of the book that no one clicks on, or if they click on it, they don't buy. And Amazon makes its
Yeah.
money, makes its money, makes its money. So what I just said is the only thing I found that works. I guarantee it works, and it has come at a lot of time, expense, and effort to figure that out. Now I've just told everyone, so this will have to be hopefully your highest rated show, or maybe I hope no one watches it now because they're going to learn my secret.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, so I need to do this and this with all
If
okay.
if I had it all to do over again, I
Mhm.
would not have released any books until I had 5. And 5 is a magic number. I don't know why. It just is. Once you have
Yeah.
5, the way that algorithm works, we know everything's an algorithm now. It starts to pick up your stuff.
And I have to agree with that because I didn't start getting more traction until I had over 5. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's weird that it's like that. And some of that was included short stories that I put out too, on top of like full on books. But I don't know, it's so weird.
Well, and it's just like when people put out the box sets,
Mhm.
they do it at 3, but that doesn't attract anyone. You have to have 6. They'll buy a box set with 6. So like for Panama Red, there's only 5 books, but I wrote a short story to get that 6th
There
book
you
in
go.
there. And then
Yeah.
that'll sell. But if you try and do 3, you're going to be disappointed with that too. And now the 3 is just taking sales away from your other books, so you're losing sales rankings on both. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the other piece of advice I'd have is when you do put your box set together, take the individual books down. You're not going to want to because you've spent years getting all the reviews and everything. But if you can funnel everything towards that box set, you might get it to chart again. And
Mhm.
getting on those Amazon charts is key to everything because that's free marketing.
Yeah, it is. Get those bestsellers and you're like, here, everybody
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I managed to do that with the box set I released this summer, and I was super excited because that was my
Good.
first time as a bestseller. I was like, girls, I finally got it. It's like,
Good.
it's there. Worked my butt off to do it and
Yeah.
planned way more in advance than I did with the other stuff. But I'm learning. I haven't been in the author field as long either, so it's like there's things you pick up as you go, and you just
Yeah.
stoke it all in. So yeah. So I'm gonna take you to another realm here.
Okay.
As a reader, what is your favorite genre to read? Do you read something similar to what you write?
Well, that is a good question. The answer would be yes. However, I mostly coming into before I started writing, I mostly read sci-fi. So my first book was a western. I like westerns, but then after that, I moved to sci-fi and I wrote like 6 books.
Ooh.
But turns out I'm not that good at sci-fi. So I switched to the ghost stories because I like those. I've read a ton of Stephen King. I like early Stephen King. I don't like current Stephen King.
Yeah.
But then what I found is I took for Panama Red, I was able to wrap some of my military experiences into the story. Again, I'm not in the story. It's not me doing it, but things that
Mhm.
happened, I was able to craft into the story. And that's what people like the most. These thrillers. That seems to be. Everyone tells me that it's sci-fi and fantasy are huge, big markets. I can't resonate in those markets. I
Yeah.
resonated in the thriller
Mhm.
genre. And once you've done this enough, you're going to write the books that sell. Because that's just how it is. And I enjoy writing. I enjoy the characters. I'm working on the seventh Dirk Lasher. That's my main
Yeah.
character book right now. So yeah, so I'm writing mostly thrillers. They're all genres that I've read, and they're the only genres that I read. So yeah, I am in what I read, but it wasn't in the order of my preference, or it's not in the order of what I liked. I guess would be the way to put it. Although I'm
Yeah.
gonna take another crack at sci-fi when I'm done with this book. I've got an idea because I think I'm experienced enough now where I think I can write a good sci-fi book.
I believe it. I believe in you. You can do it. So anything you
Oh,
put your mind to, you can do it, I think.
I'm
So
sold. I'm sold. I believe you.
yes. And I write mine, my stuff's all mixed fantasy, romance, paranormal kind of stuff, but it tends
Yeah.
to lean towards the steamier kind of romance, which I found kind of does better for me. I don't know
Towards the what
why.
kind? The what kind of romance?
The steamy kind of
Oh,
romance.
steamy. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I won't go there. I mean, the bedroom door is closed in my books, as they
And there's
say.
nothing wrong with that because I do have somewhere it's cleaner stuff.
Yeah.
But the series I'm trying to finish up right now, I had a little bit of a setback this year because I had family pass away and stuff
Oh,
that's
that's too bad.
happened.
I'm
So
sorry.
it was kind of prepared for it, kind of wasn't. Anyway, but I started working back on edits for the book too. It's going to be a trilogy today. And I'm like, okay, like there's a lot of action and fighting scenes in it too. So I'm kind of like, okay, what do I define this as exactly? Because it's
Right.
weird because some books you come across, they just don't fit in one genre. And
Well,
it's weird.
and just like the paranormal books I do, they don't
Mhm.
really fit. I mean, it's like 4 or 5
Mhm.
different genres, and you just gotta. I don't know. Some people would tell you look on Amazon and find the categories that are the weakest to make that the genre, but that's actually
Yeah,
bad advice because they're the weakest for a reason. It's
that's
better.
true.
It's better to throw yourself out there with the big boys and
Mhm.
fight your way to the top because if a category is populated with a lot of popular books, that's because it's a popular category.
That's true.
Um, yeah. So
And I
so
hadn't
just
thought of it like that because, like, I know there's also the like to easier, like the kind of almost like the go around to get yourself on the bestseller list is to put them in those weaker categories. But
yeah.
that's right. If you want to see how it does compared to its actual categories, it is good to put them in
Yeah, look, if
with
you're
that.
just starting out and you're just trying to get some self assurance, then pick transcendental cooking or whatever. I mean, it's got to be related to some degree, but throw it in
Yeah,
there, and then you get 3 book sales and you're number 7, and you feel good, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're not going to ever bust into making money with that. So, and
that's true.
not that you're gonna make a lot of money doing this anyway. But
Yeah.
even, I mean, I've sold over 100,000 books and I couldn't earn my living doing this, but I noticed the income. Don't get me wrong. It's an important part of my,
Yeah.
my side hustles, as I say.
Yes, it is definitely a lot of, and I kudos to those who can make a living off of this because it's hard. It is very hard because we, as any
You,
creative, starting out and like being new into it, you don't make hardly anything, especially if you're pricing them low, and you
a,
kind of have to do that to
it's
get
hard. A lot,
going.
a lot of the people that have been doing this for a long time, when Amazon really started doing this about 10, 12 years ago,
Mhm.
there weren't hardly any authors in their author program. So it was easier to compete. And they gave you the chance to make the book free for like a week, but the rankings counted against everything else. There was only one set of rankings. So what happened was people come along, they have an okay book, it's fine, but they made it free. And, they got 800,000 downloads,
Mhm.
which now means what I just told you. Now they have 800,000 people who Amazon is going to market their stuff to. So the book's a little bit of a success, but now they do the next one, and they're like, holy cow, they have all these people, and it just keeps building. So they skipped, 5 years of work because they got it was lucky. They're not being the good authors, but they got there early. Now it's so
Mhm.
much harder because there's I think I don't know what the number is, but it's something like 1 million books a year or something like that. New books Amazon puts out. So
Yeah,
you're
it's a
really
lot.
it's really noisy. Yeah.
Mhm. It's definitely a lot harder to get noticed now
Yeah.
compared to
Oh,
then.
but don't pay for it. You're not going to pay your way to the top. I mean, unless money doesn't mean anything to you. But if money doesn't mean anything to you, you're probably not a writer. So
Mm.
yeah.
Hold on.
Yep.
What? Good. Okay, go put the what's left in the trash and put the plate in the sink. Okay, and go play. Sorry, he finally ate his lunch.
Well,
So
Andy's going to put his plate in his sink. I don't think I
yes,
ever learned that.
we've been working on that. Like, it's parenting is hard, and like that's
Yeah.
another thing. Like, you're writing now. What is your writing schedule like?
Well, okay. So here's my schedule. Now I'm very lucky with COVID. Lots of us work from home now, but I
Mhm.
actually own two companies because I'm an entrepreneur, and it's very hard to start a company that actually makes money. But I have two of them, not a lot, but enough to where I don't have to spend. I have to go somewhere, and there's no one watching if I get there at 8 and if I leave at 5. So I have a home office here, and I get up in the morning. I've the very easy mornings. I typically wake up around 6 or 6:30, but that's just naturally. That's my body clock. And then by the time I've had coffee and get over here, it's probably 8 o'clock. And then I will spend. I'll start writing at 8, and then I write until I've hit at least 1,000 words. Or if I'm having a good day, then I keep going. I try and hit at least 1,500 words a day on the weekdays, and that will take me anywhere from 9:30 to 10. And I'm on the computer. I'm answering emails, so I mean, I'm interacting in my job that pays. And then I'm done. Then I'm working. Now, if I have a lull in the afternoon and I feel energetic, I might go back and try and do another 1,000 words. And then on the weekends, I will try and do between 2,000 and 6,000 words. And those are 6,000. I've only hit that a couple days. Those are big days, and you have to be careful because if I write too much, my writing goes what I call flat, so it just becomes kind of uninteresting. So that's the morning piece. Then at night, instead of reading someone else's book, what I do on my iPad, because I back up all my files to the Google Cloud thing. So when I go to bed, I have my iPad, and then I open what I wrote that day. Actually, I go back a day or two because 1,000 words or 2,000. That's not, writing it takes 2.5 hours. Reading it takes a couple minutes, not that long. So I'll read back. And then as I read through, I make little edits. If I got it from, for, to, the, all that little stuff. I won't do big plot points, but I'll just basically clean it up, basically edit it, and make sure I've got the story right. Make sure where I stopped the prior day flows seamlessly into where I wrote today. And then I'll read it, and I might read it twice or three times just until I get tired and go to bed. Then when I wake up all night, my subconscious has been percolating, and I know what the story is, and then I start writing again. So it's a circle. So I don't have drafts anymore. I don't have a first draft. By the time I'm done with the book, I've read the beginning into the middle of the book 100 times, 30 times. I mean, so much that uh, I get done. There's the work to do to clean it up at the end. I have an editor that I like a lot. Sometimes I'll send it to the editor first. Sometimes I'll send it to the test readers first. There's no perfect way to do that. I tend to go to the test readers first, although then they'll bitch about all the stuff the editor would have found. But if I go to the editor first, and then the test readers have input I'm going to use, because I don't always use all their input, then I'm now making edits without that second set of editor eyes, because I don't want to have to go to the editor a second time. So whatever, I do that. I'll finalize the cover, the book blurb, and the book is out.
I like that method. That's actually pretty cool, and it makes it a little bit easier to get the books out. I haven't ever thought about going back and like reading over it like that.
Yeah.
I did recently read something like if you put your manuscript like on a different device or print it out.
Bribery.
Yes, dude, it works.
Yeah,
But I read that if you put it on a different device and look it over after like typing it up on the computer, you can catch some of your errors better. Have you found
absolutely.
that? Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I do that. You look, your brain is your biggest asset and your worst enemy when you're
Yeah.
writing because and which is why you change devices. I change context. So I'm in the office. I'm looking at it now. It's not. It's dark. I'm reading it like a real book. It's on a different device, and you can catch more. You still can't catch everything. The only way to catch everything and be your own editor is to finish, put it away for a month or two or three,
Mm,
and then come back. It's still going to be friendly to you're still going to feel associated with it, but you can see it objectively. And this isn't just something you learn. It's not about ego. It's your brain. It fills in the blanks. It knows what you were trying to do and remembers. So that's what it feeds you. Another strategy is to read it out loud.
yeah.
But that's. I mean, my wife's sleeping. What am I going to do? So you're yelling action scenes. That I'm writing.
Yes.
No, so it doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you go with it. And the other thing this does is it keeps me in the details of the story. So I don't have a character with blonde hair that now has dark hair, because I'm constantly I'm in the story, and I live that story for however long it takes to write the book. Which I've written books as fast as 5 weeks.
Hmm.
And I've had them take, as I told you, 2 years. So it's just,
Yeah.
and the other thing I've learned is not like a baby. It's not 9 months. It's done when it's done. It's a pot of stew. When it's ready, it's ready.
Yeah. And that's true. And I think a lot of authors have a hard time deciding when it's reached that point. But I don't know. I feel like I finally found that point. I'm like, okay, I go through it once, send it to like beta readers and stuff, do another run through, send it to editors. And then once it's done with the editors,
Yeah,
like
it's
I'm
done.
not gonna.
But it's a work of art. It's never going to be finished. You just have to
Mhm.
stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can once if you read it a couple times and you feel like the characters are sufficiently run around, you don't need to
Yeah.
just destroy them in every scene. So you probably have enough in there. It's probably okay. In
Yeah.
fact, the Dirk Lasher series.
Hmm.
I was almost done after this last book, which was the end of the 6 book series, because I'm like, I can't put this guy through anything else. I just feel bad for him at this point.
Yeah.
And but then I was like, nah, yeah, hold on, he's got more in him. So there's more adventures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, we have hit our end node. We've got our time in. So go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and your work.
The best place to find me is frequency99.com. The two nines are numbers, frequency99.com. That's the publisher website. All my books are up there, and it links to all the wonderful places you can get them. Many of them are free. You just heard my strategy on that. So a lot of my books,
Yes.
especially the first books in series, are free. The Smalls, which is one of my paranormal books, is currently free. Paranormal Red's free. So check it out if you like it. Um, there's plenty more where that came from.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
All right, Madeline. Thank you very much.